Good morning. Glad you're here and taking a few minutes to be with us. And I wanted to mention this morning, I'm just looking at some prayer cards for missionaries. And I just want you to think a little bit. It has to do with where we're going in the scriptures. We'll be in the book of Matthew, chapter 16 in a minute. But I'd like you to think with me a little bit about these people that have that we support, people that are our missionaries. Here's Andrew and Laura Steers. They're in Tasmania, and so they're south of Australia. Very unique world that they live in. And I was asked Brother Steers one time, I said, when can you record, as far as history that you've read, we don't know everything, but what is known to us, common knowledge, when was the gospel first brought to Tasmania? And he said in the mid-1800s. He had a date more accurate than that, and I can't remember what it was, but I was shocked that for 1800 years after the time of Christ, the gospel was not there in Tasmania. And then again, it could have gotten there here and there and, been lost or whatever. But they're down there. Now, Mrs. Steers, Laura's been through a lot of cancer issues. Brother Steers is he's got a pretty serious handicap himself that he's wrestled with all his life. And they could be sitting back collecting disability checks or whatever, but they chose to surrender their lives to the will of God in an uncomfortable and awkward and difficult circumstance. And they're not doing what's pleasing to the flesh or what's easiest. They're doing, they're there for souls. And a great couple. These are some cards, updated cards, newer cards. I haven't put them in the back behind the camera there. There's a little cubicle where I put my prayer cards. Here's a newer card for Israel and Tanya Alvarez in Belize. Israel rode a bus in his church in Los Angeles. Tanya rode a bus to our church in our church here. And these two grew up bus kids, going to Sunday school without family for the most part, and ended up going to Bible college, meeting each other, marrying, and they've got a great family, and certainly they faced some trials. And Tanya spoke at Our Ladies Conference just recently. Israel is a great preacher, and this is a great family. I've been there, I've preached at their church in Central America, and but they're there not because it's the most convenient place or comfortable place or easy place. And there is a toll on saying to God, not my will, but thine be done. There's a family I recently met, and I'm not going to give any details about them because this is on the internet, that a family that's working in the Middle East in a place that they could get tossed out of, but they're having to come and go. A couple of months there, gone for a few weeks or a month or two, then back for a few months, and they keep themselves legal and able to be there, and yet they're there for souls, and they're working their way into the hearts of people, and in a culture where the gospel was started, and yet very hard to the gospel. Here's a card I picked up, and I already had one of these from the Gamiris. Beam and Charity Gamiri going to Nepal. And Beam was basically, we might have called him a ghetto kid or almost a homeless orphan. And missionaries in Nepal invited him to come and work. He was trying to pick up money as a kid, just pennies here and there. And it's a difficult place. It's a poor place, a very poor country, definitely a third world country, you might say. Charity was raised in the Philippines. Her parents were missionaries there, and so she's lived her life in the mission field, came to America, went to Bible college, graduated. This is a sharp couple. He could pastor anywhere in America. They could work on any church staff, and they would be a welcome addition. They're quality people, and yet they're halfway through getting their support to go to Nepal, a place where it's very difficult for the average person. Most missionaries could not get there, but he's Nepali, and he can go there as a citizen. And what a great couple. But again, there's a sacrifice. They've said we're willing to pay a price to be there and to do that. And here, this is too small to see the Vong family, and they're just such a good family, and 8 kids, 2, 4, 6, yeah, 8 kids. Them and their 8 kids. They're from Pacific Baptist in Long Beach, Brother Myers ministry and the Esposito's ministry, and their ministries in Cambodia. And Mrs. Vong and some of her kids were at the ladies' conference with us. And again, why leave plush America with Cold Stone ice cream and In-N-Out burgers and fancy restaurants and all of the luxuries that we enjoy, and doctors and hospitals and all that, to work in Cambodia? And there's a sacrifice there. And here's, anyway, there's more in this list, but they all basically have said they're going to do the same thing. They've all said, we're willing to give up comfort. We're willing to give up being with family. Holidays and Christmases and birthdays, we're going to be across the world. And we're going to be in a place where protection may be very limited, where healthcare and sanitation be very limited, and each one, of course, a little different than the other. And one of the things is the parents surrendered their lives to the mission field, but the kids didn't. The kids are just with mom and dad, and once the children get 10, 12 years old, the Morgan family that we've started supporting the last year, they just arrived in Japan not long ago, and there they are with their oldest are early teens, and those, to move a teenager to another culture, to a language as difficult to read and write and speak as Japanese, and away from friends and family and all that, there's a sacrifice. And with all that in mind, I wanted to, for one thing, I'd like to encourage you, keep praying for our missionaries and keep supporting them financially. Pray for their marriage, pray for their health, pray for their children, pray for their work, that they'd be able to reach the lost. The world needs the gospel. This is a life and death matter. 1,000 years from now, no one's going to care what kind of car I drove. No one's going to care what kind of house I lived in. But 1,000 years from now, they're going to care whether they got saved or not. And that's vital. Well, anyway, over here in Matthew chapter 16 and verse 24, then said Jesus to his disciples, a disciple, not the apostles, this is the group, the larger group. A disciple is a disciplined one who put some focus on it, saying, I'm beginning to turn my focus more and more. I'm narrowing my view toward the things of Jesus Christ. And he says in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Very simple statement. If you want to come after me, you're going to have to start out by denying yourself. And this Christian life we have had in America, especially, I've seen it in the last 20 years, more than the last 40 years. Going on 41 years here at our church. And the last 20 years has been, especially the last decade, has been the rise of me first, the rise of self. I want my rights. I want to be treated better. I want, give me, take care of me. And of course, the government eggs it on, the schools egg it on. And it's also corrupt. I mean, the idea that there's people in jail for whatever went on January 6th at the Capitol, but who's in jail from all the riots and the burning of police cars and the attacking of police stations and rioting in the streets, all of that. Nobody's being held without an attorney and without due process over that. And it's a world of injustice and a world that's so bent. But it's me first. I want my rights and I want what's mine and I want what I deserve. And I've had people over all these years, on occasion, I've had somebody come. I remember many years ago. No one would think who this is. A guy came to our church and came once or twice, and he said, Pastor, I'm a gifted adult teacher. Our church was running, 50 to 100, and I taught the only adult Sunday school class, and there was kids classes, of course. but he wanted my class. And I thought, you go out and knock on doors and you bring in a bunch of people and that'll be your adult class. Or you want to teach a children's class. When Al and Pat Trewin first joined our church, he'd pastored for some years. He'd taught Greek, and I think he taught Hebrew as well. And with all of their scholastic ability and all of their years of Christian ministry, they taught 4 and 5-year-olds. They were happy to serve. They just came, make me a servant. I'm not here to get any attention. I'm here to be a blessing. And God began to bring people. And I hope you'll pray for our church. I want God's blessing on this church. I want us to reach people. I want us to reach children and teens and adults. I want people saved. I want to save their marriages. I want to save the young people growing up. I want to save their morality. I want to help them make good choices and help them marry right and help them marry pure and help them to keep their marriage. And this world is so dirty. It's jamming filth into the lives of people. And of course, there's garbage around us, whether it be schools or churches or business or whatever. It's a corrupt world that we're in. But I want to help people, and I want to help them be in heaven eternally. But I don't want just that. Jesus said, "I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly." He came to help us here on earth. And this group of missionaries here, they said, "We'll surrender convenience and comfort and luxury so somebody else can be saved and give them a chance to have a happy home and a happy marriage and know how to stay married and know how to raise their children, to know how to love their family and get their family to love each other." But it starts out with self-denial. It does not start out with what I deserve. It starts out with self-denial. If you want to look over to Mark chapter 8 and verse 34, it's almost the same thing. Mark 8:34, when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also. So you've got apostles, disciples, and the people in general. He said unto them, "Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall save it." And so again, we see this denial. Our bus drivers, how we need bus drivers. It's very difficult to keep a bus ministry alive. It's a ministry of sacrifice. Bus drivers, I got to church. Most Sundays I'll get to church on maybe between 7 and 7:30 at the latest, 7:15, and buses are already idling. They've been checked out by the drivers. They're waiting to get themselves together, and those bus drivers drive, and then they get the kids to church, and they got to get the bus parked, and they get to Sunday school, then they get to church, and then and some of our bus drivers, for whatever reason, don't drive in the afternoon. Well, that's very difficult, because then we've got bus captains who should be interacting with those kids. The last thing of the day should be that touch and contact and conversation, that emotional touch with the bus captain. I hope you have a good week, and I'm praying for you, and that they're getting off the bus knowing they're loved, but instead the bus captain's driving, and it's very difficult to do that. To be a bus driver is sacrificial. To be a bus captain, they'll get at church 7 in the morning and get their bus together, and they've already spent many hours on Saturday visiting kids and spending time with families, and run their bus, and then get off the bus, go to Sunday school, go to church, and then and I've usually not allowed this. I've tried to protect families. So if you were a bus captain, you didn't have any other ministries if you were married. But our 3 assistant pastors, those 3, as COVID caused so many people to be paranoid about things, they decided they were going to start our buses back up. And so these are staff members with huge responsibilities of Sunday school and ministry leadership. And then they picked up a bus route, and none of them should be bus captains. They do an excellent job. Our buses have never been so good, but all 3 of those men should be here when people start arriving. They should be here greeting visitors and getting people to classes and interacting and getting to know people and building that camaraderie. And we need bus captains. But see, to be a bus captain is self-sacrifice. Sunday afternoon to go to a rest home. That's dinner time, nap time, relax a little while on Sunday because I work all week long. I'll be going back to work in the morning. Between church, morning and evening church, I want to sit back during sports seasons, watch a ball game or whatever, take a nap in the recliner. But if they go to a rest home. And that's a self-sacrifice. If any man will follow me, you want to look over to Luke chapter 9. You find the same thing again in Luke chapter 9 and verse 23. And he says, and he said unto them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And again, it's not just deny himself, it's take up his cross. A cross is self-sacrifice. A cross is painful. A cross is something where you are hurting on behalf of someone else. When Jesus took the cross, it was for you and me. He didn't have to do that. He did it so we wouldn't have to. And to take up your cross in ministry, it's huge. To sing in the choir. And some people might say, I can't sing. Well, try practicing. Join the choir. Get in there, start singing. You can learn to sing like you can learn to golf. I'm sure I could learn to golf. Even with my bad knee, I could probably learn to golf. But it'd take time. I'm not going to golf once a year and be a golfer. And so why not join the choir? Well, you need to go to choir practice. And you need to we want you to look sharp. You're up front. You're representing the church. You're representing Christ. You're representing our whole ministry philosophy up there. And so, yes, it does matter. And deny ourselves. Many people with very good voices sit in the pew and not in the choir because they don't want to pay the price. And there's not going to be rewards in heaven because you came to choir practice. And I think it is important. Maybe God's going to reward it, but it's not being a martyr. We're not going to stand next to the people who were burned at the stake and say, there you go, we were in this thing together. It's easy. It's easy. And this whole thing of denying ourselves in the Christian life, it is just to get up and say, I remember Nancy Mitchell, she's in heaven, I can tell her story, and she wouldn't mind. But she got saved and baptized, started coming to church, and became very faithful. And she said, Pastor, I'm struggling, I haven't time to read my Bible. I said, really? And she worked a full-time job, and her kids were grown, but her husband had left her, and she was trying to put everything back together in her world, and that's really what got her saved, what broke her heart. So she came and was accepted Christ. But I said, do you read anything else? She said, oh, yeah, I read the LA Times every day. I said, all of it? She said, oh, yeah, pretty much all of it. And I said, how about you put the LA Times down and only read half of it or maybe none of it until you've read your Bible? She said, oh, okay, I can do that. Well, that's a simple denial, but it's a habit she had. And she had to deny herself that thing so that she could have this thing. The Christian life is a complete life of saying no to ourselves and saying yes to these things. And there are people over the years who they would like to run a ministry, they'd like to teach or do whatever, but they want to do it when it's convenient. And if as I said recently in church, if you're going to teach somewhere, if you're going to be involved in leadership in our ministry, first thing, you got to come to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. You need to be there 3 times a week. Now, there's exceptions. Maybe you work shift work, and that's your job. We have juggled some things with that. But when you're not at work, you're at church. And we understand there's those kind of things. But as a general rule, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And what else? We'll read your Bible each day. You need to have a walk with God. What are you going to teach people to do? If you don't have a walk with God, how can you teach them to have a walk with God? Well, then we need you to love the people you're teaching enough to get out visiting and get to know people, get into their homes. You're not teaching a lesson, you're teaching human beings. And so you need to be in their homes. You need to knock on their doors and meet their parents or meet their kids or many times there's multiple families living under one roof. And if you're not willing to go out on the streets with us, meeting people, it doesn't even matter if you meet just the people from your class. It's you're meeting the world around us. And in some cases, they're very successful, but they're so busy. They have no time to have a good marriage. And they're so busy. They don't have time to raise their children. Oh, the great, great need. And this life of sacrifice, if someone's going to be a part of the ministry here, we expect there's going to always, and I mentioned this, like I said recently in church, there are some things that you need to deny yourself and say, I'm not going to do it. You can't go to the beach once a month and go to the mountains once a month and still be a Sunday school teacher. That's called an unfaithful Sunday school teacher. And Paul wrote to the Corinthian church, it's required in stewards that a man be found faithful. Oh, it is a life of denial. And when we get to heaven, we'll be so glad that we said no to some things. We'll be so glad we said, I'd like to do that, but I'm not going to. I grew up in a world, my dad, he hunted with a bow. He was a bow hunter, and then he hunted with a rifle, normal hunting. And I just enjoy walking in the mountains and the woods, even if I don't shoot anything, but bird hunting and any kind of hunting, fishing, I just love it. And but I have to deny that because I feel my obligations to people are more important. And I want to encourage you. You think about these missionaries and how they've denied themselves. And let's decide, what have we denied ourselves for Christ? To deny a cigarette or beer, to deny that, worldly activities and things, that's little. That's little compared to the great people who've carried the gospel to the world. Hey, let's understand Jesus. We're following in the footsteps of the one who was crucified for us. And Paul said, I'm crucified with Christ. I die daily. I'm going to live for God. I want to encourage you. Let's live for God. Let's take some areas and begin to not deny ourselves in some small areas, and let's see God use us for his glory. Have a great day.